Dr. Hopper, good morning. Happy Wednesday to you in downtown Alton.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. And now, where are you located in?
I'm in Springfield, Illinois.
Really cool. And now, with that being said, I got an email about your book and started reading through it a little bit and learning more about it. Let's take us right through it, an overview for our audience, if you could.
Sure. Basically, it's about bringing coaching into the classroom. I mean, I had a lot of clients when I was coaching asking me, why don't they do this in school? This would have helped a lot if I was, younger when I learned a lot of this. And so I went into the classroom. That was a second career for me to see how I could implement coaching into a classroom. And over the years, I had several experiences doing teaching AVID classes. I was able to incorporate in that. I did some leadership advisories and after school and things like that. But my goal was always to figure out how to bring it so every single teacher could do it in their classroom. And the model that I used is based on self-reflection and self-awareness. Because really at this age, when I was working with clients, they're adults who are coming to me with a lot of experience. They have a lot of knowledge. They know where they want to go. Maybe they're stuck in getting there. But when you're dealing with high school students, especially I taught freshmen and sophomores,
God love
they
you.
don't have that experience.
Right. When I wanted to ask about that too, because it seems like now with this, and we talk about it all the time here on this show with medical experts and with mental health experts, about this social media influence and this kind of false reality that high school students are living in. And with coaching and bringing this type of instruction into a classroom, and I'm no expert in this, but it just, kind of my thought is, could you really help maybe, or could teachers help bring kind of that just sense of grounding back to that student, regardless of whatever avenue they're in?
Exactly. And that's my point. I mean, we have social emotional learning in schools, which is basically emotional intelligence. And this is the thing that kind of kills me. I mean, we're spending our time teaching to a test so that students are prepared for college, and I get that. But there's so much more that they need to be prepared for, and part of that is understanding who they are.
Right, and there's no test for that.
And what their strengths are. We don't focus on that. In fact, we do the opposite.
Right. Well, and that's such a great point, because there is no test for who, CJ Nasello is as a human being that you could take or I could take. And just like that high school student that's going through life changes and they got all of these external and internal factors that are hitting them, how is the learning now? Is it really just not there yet, do you think, for all of the children, really, that it's too templated, it's too rubric for maybe a mass audience instead of maybe tailored to that individual student?
100%.
Wow.
I mean, that's part of my complaint. And I mean, do you have children, CJ?
No, not yet.
No. Okay. Well, when you look at a young child, and I have a granddaughter, and you look at how she learns, it's through, and I don't know how you learn, but I go down rabbit holes.
Oh, me too. It's bad. Yep.
I mean, that's how you learn. You get an interest and you follow it. And like my daughter-in-law said to me, she said, geometry didn't make sense to me until I started quilting. But we don't provide those opportunities for students to really apply that learning. And I think what coaching does is it helps students identify, first of all, that you're not like everybody else. You don't need to be like everybody else. You just need to worry about you and how do you take care of yourself. So if you're stressed, what are some options that you can use to de-stress? I mean, we don't really afford opportunities for doing that in school. And this allows teachers just to shift your focus a little bit to individual personalized learning, because every person can only take care of themselves. I mean, I can't decide for you what's important to you or what you find beautiful or what your goals are. that every person has to take responsibility for their own personal growth.
And really, to follow up on that, you mentioned something, and we're talking a little bit about that teacher mindset too, and that relationship between students. And I want to talk more about the empowerment model and get into that here in a second. But, one thing that always sticks out to me, and I think the conversation is starting to become a more and more prevalent one, is that, teachers are, right now currently very underpaid, and they're going through the stresses that every one of those kids' parents are probably going through or have a relative that's going through something. And how important is it for the teacher to be mindful, but also to be taking care of their own, mental health and all of those important factors, before we can manage a classroom? Because it seems like once you lose self-management skills, you lose the ability to manage or maybe help care for that child.
Exactly. And that's why this is in coaching is a co-learning experience. Okay. So it's as a coach, I'm also evaluating myself in this process. And I often used things that I felt like I needed, like meditation. And we should be teaching students how to use meditation. We should be using methods that help calm them down before taking a test or when they're in extreme. We just don't do that. We don't allow that. We don't allow students to find out what their strengths and then use those strengths in school. And sometimes it's not academic. Sometimes it's different, or sometimes it's very nuanced. And so helping students understand that we're all here in our school. We all have our own lessons we have to learn. We all come here with our own strengths and our own experiences. And so everybody's different, and get people to feel good about that.
Absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe earlier you were talking about a story with your granddaughter about quilting. And I wanted to ask you.
Not my granddaughter. That was my daughter.
Oh, your daughter.
Quilting.
Well, it was such a great point, though, because so many people prepare differently and we manage stress differently. And, how important do you think it would be to have more of a lot bigger conversation? You're not on our daily show or not on RiverBender, but on like an actual platform with true leaders that could make that change, because it seems like, students are being taught how to fit in this kind of machine mode of here's the questions that you need to prepare for. Here's just the material we'll see on Tuesday for your test, when really that's not how life is. When you have taxes due and you can't pay your bill, you aren't just sitting there looking at your computer. You're out trying to work, or you're trying to manage your stress and make it possible.
Exactly. And CJ, if you think about it, 40% of our students don't go to college.
Wow.
So what do we have for them?
Right.
What do we have for them? What do they feel like they're getting out of it? There's no motivation there. I just was reading the other day about the report card that came out from my school district in Springfield, and we have a 42% absenteeism rate.
Whoa.
That means 5,400 kids did not go to school for 17 or more days. And I'm wondering, if 40% of our students don't go to college, is there a correlation there?
That's
true. Are we not meeting their needs? And I don't think we are. We're not giving them enough. I personally feel every child should go, and of course I'm biased because I taught business, but should go through something similar to the work program where you learn how to buy a car and what it takes to rent and finances and how to take care of yourself. Those are practical skills, but we also we know so much more in science now than we did before. For example, everything is energy. Everything is energy. So if we're energy, what thoughts are you projecting out there?
Well, and sorry.
And we can change that. We can change that.
Well, and it's such it's a conversation that's happening here in the Madison County area of Illinois, big time. And you have rural schools like in Jerseyville School District that are using more of an agricultural kind of element to it with this new technology to keep kids engaged. But also, I was in a program 7 years ago called the CEO program, and it was about running a business, and I created a business with it and all that. But to me, it wasn't really a business class. It was was exactly what you're talking about. Because in life, you need to be able to communicate with people, and not just have the, hey, what's up conversation, but have, intellectual conversations and being able to talk about things that are a little bit touchy, or maybe things that are more, kind of business-like. We need to be prepared for those. And I think that with this model, or with what people could pick up out of this book, I think that a lot of it could kind of start melding into that, where it's more of just,
Yes.
we have X, Y, and Z to obtain because of the state's guidelines, and we got to get to these tests, but we really don't have to get to it in such an A to B to C to D way.
Exactly. I think that we need to provide more options for students to really explore their strengths, first of all, and second of all, to really build their own inner personal integrity about who they are. If you don't start with that, I give the example in the book. My son. Well, first of all, I have a son who didn't graduate from high school. He dropped out. And my second son decided his senior year of high school that he was going to do pre-med.
Oh.
Now, this is a child who's never shown any interest ever in medicine, but wanted to go for the money. But, that's where I feel like coaching can help. I mean, that's not your strength. That's not your interest. That's not where you want to go. And of course, he got a full ride scholarship and ended up struggling and losing the scholarship because it wasn't. And then he's got to go back to school. We're not really preparing. I mean, I remember asking students and saying, what are you going to do after graduation? And it's like deer in the headlights, They're like, I don't know. Because they don't have, all they're being offered is college. That's it. And college is great. I mean, I'm a Ph.D., right?
Right.
But that's not for everybody. And like my son, who dropped out of high school, is actually, he went back, got his GED. He went into construction, which, but whatever. And got his GED, got his certification in computer science. He's now an IT director for a satellite company in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
Without a high school education. I mean, and he's not the kind that can sit down in a seat for, 7 hours a day and just progress through this model of keeping everybody on the same. That's not the learner he is.
Absolutely.
But he's successful. And my other son is too. But we have to allow students to find their own way and to say it's okay. See, that's the other thing. I think we're so worried about failure that we don't promote resilience.
Right. I mean, who wants to post the picture on Facebook that says my business closed, or I just foreclosed on my house? It's not really it's not taking pride in it, but it's saying, it seems like at times we only post when we're smiling, and we only post the for social recognition when things are going good. But on the flip side of it, if you just say, hey, man, this has just, been a rough couple of weeks here. Hopefully things get better. You don't realize that people actually do care. And once kids do, just from what I've experienced and kind of the consultant stuff that I've done with business for younger people, is that it really empowers them to realize that failure is literally okay. And all of these famous and successful people failed all the time. It's just a matter of timing.
Exactly. And we don't allow the opportunity for students to learn from that and grow from it. And that's where I think teachers are natural coaches. They have the relationship. And newsflash, teachers did not get into the business or into education to teach to a test.
Right. Now
they came to inspire students, to help them reach their full potential. That's why it's such a perfect match for coaching.
What do how do you feel about the incentive grade now that we're just on the topic of, getting the full package? Because I've always been fascinated by this. And, I have a college professor in the family, and it just, it seems like the model is a very interesting model to look at in terms of just studies and correlations. But do you believe in an incentivized way of not necessarily rewarding students for not doing the work, but, but getting better from maybe previous tests, maybe from previous things that we're learning? If it's all put back together in the same test, does an incentive work like that?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So,
I think what you're asking. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm asking here is, let's just say you're teaching geometry again, and your next test is a little bit of geometry and a little bit of, an add-on of geometry, because I'm not a math person. So let's just say geometry 2. It's a mix of 1 and 2. But, the student A has a terrible time preparing for it. They're trying all that they can, 65%, all of a sudden we're out of the chute on a bad, kind of run. Then the next test, though, they're like, you know what, let's see if I can really hone this in. They're preparing, they're studying more on their old tests, they're learning the new stuff. They get an 80%. Do you think an incentive to maybe say, hey, you learned that material again, it took you a little bit longer, but you got it right on this test, let's give you an incentive grade there. Let's curve that up and let's kind of balance it out. Does that work?
I guess it would work. I mean, I think those types of situations depend on the buy-in, probably depends on the agreements. I mean, I think you run into issues with parents. I mean, that's always the case.
Right.
But I do think we have to come up with something different because our kids aren't motivated.
When it seems like
they're not motivated for a test, really.
Right. And it seems like once they maybe get a bad grade on one, that's the end of it mentally for them. It's a disconnect that they are never going to repair that year.
Well, and if you keep telling students year after year after year, you're not meeting standards, you need remediation, you're weak in this area. I mean, those are all disempowering words.
Right.
We don't focus on the empowerment, which is what's missing.
And that's what I wanted to touch on too, is that empowerment cycle, because I think that is our model, because I think that is so important to touch on if we can lead into that.
Yes. And I'll just say, like, if you have a student who's been hearing, I'm not making standards, I'm not, am I substandard?
Right.
I mean, isn't that what's being communicated? We really need to change our language and help students feel good about where they're progressing. And that's where the empowerment model comes in, because it gives students don't feel like they have a lot of control.
Right.
Okay. This gives them control. You have control over you. You have control over what you're learning, and you're learning 24/7. So what is it you're learning about yourself? What strategies, perspectives, or abilities can you learn to help you be successful in life? Not just in school, but in life. Mm-hmm. And that's where the coaching, the empowerment model comes in, because it says, look, you have strengths, you have different things that you can do to help yourself for your own well-being, and people you can go to and things you can do. That's taking control, because we can't control what happens outside of us.
Right.
We can't.
Right.
The only thing we have control over is ourselves. So, and as a teacher, I'm the same thing. I'm looking at a student and I'm saying, why does this student irritate me so much? What is it about me?
Right.
That creates that.
Well, and that's what I think is so cool about this empowerment model, because I was going through some of the other highlights of your book, and it all ties into that model, because, empowerment and mentality really leads into so much of stress and time management and all these important aspects of our lives, because if you're feeling down in the dumps and all of a sudden you're still working and more things are getting dumped on top of you, you're not going to be able to manage it. You're going to be stressed out even more so than when you were. And, take me through, now that you've been able to write this book and you have your coaching and teaching experience, what have you learned since then? After writing the book, has it given you a period for yourself to reflect and just observe others and see if it's capturing what you inputted into this piece?
Yes. And I think there's so much overwhelm right now in the education system.
Oh, for sure.
And it's really hard to get that piece across. In fact, I had one teacher say to me, Linda, this is all really good, but we have so many issues we have to take care of in school first before we can do this.
I get you.
But the problem is that this gets at a lot of those issues.
Right. I was getting ready to say that. It seems like if you tackle this one, then those ones that are kind of looming big, 10-year, 15-year problems, they're going to subside.
Exactly. And I think if you have more than one person, if you have a group of people that are teachers or people in a building, it doesn't even have to be teachers, but who are using empowering language, who are pointing out strengths to students, who are saying it's okay to fail, and what can you do to help yourself? Can you use positive affirmations? Can you use visualization? We've got so much information. Science is telling us what we can do to help ourselves in these areas. We know that our thoughts create a lot of our world and our perception of the world, you know? And so if I've got thinking that's not helping me, how can I change it? What can I do? And that's where I think teachers can help. You give them a smorgasbord, but you let them choose. They are the ones who are empowered to do it. And if they don't want to, they don't want to.
Well,
you know,
before we get into the final part of this, I got to ask you about maybe a relationship or a conversation because, there's teachers that I have had, when I was a freshman, when I was in fourth grade and third grade that I remember and still talk to in the grocery store and all of that. Was there a student that maybe changed your perspective or if not changed, highlighted and maybe multiplied your thoughts on this, topic alone about coaching?
Yeah. Well, I've got a lot of stories
I
like
bet,
that.
I bet.
But the first one that comes to mind is a student who I had in middle school. And he was feeling very bad about himself. The team had gone and won state in basketball, and he was part of that team. But many of his comrades, I guess, or teammates were looking at high schools that would position them to play in college. And he just didn't feel like he was good enough to do that. He didn't know what to do with his life. He was totally lost and he was despairing. And was sitting in my class after the class one day after school. And so I started talking to him and I said, but what about your other gifts and talents? I mean, you're not just a basketball player. And he really didn't know what I was talking about. Wow. He had no clue. And this is a kid who was very sensitive. He was a good listener. He had all of his friends who would come and talk to him and listen to, and he would listen to them. And he was very empathetic. And he had just a lot of good advice because he listened and those are skills and gifts that he didn't even recognize in himself. I had another student. She was she was a very good student. She came up to me and she says, I don't know what career. I'm interested in a lot of things. So I don't know what career to follow. I don't know where to go. And I said, well, why don't you make a list of all your strengths and then try to match them and see what are the good fits, right? So she came up with this list and she showed it to me. The one thing that I thought she was brilliant at, she didn't have on there. And that's that for a very top student in the school who comes from a great family, she never saw differences in people ever. She would talk to someone, help someone. It didn't matter. She treated everyone the same, with the same kind regard, what a gift, what a strength, but she didn't see that in herself. And sometimes our gifts, we don't, and notice how we don't talk about it. I'll tell you that talking about strengths was one of the hardest things in my classroom.
Oh, I bet. 100%. Yeah.
Because we're real good about telling what's bad about ourselves.
It's true.
But if somebody says, oh, I really like how I managed that talk today, it almost sounds like you're conceited.
Right.
We don't acknowledge strengths. Right. And we are quick to acknowledge all the ways that we're short, that we come up short. And that was hard with kids because they had a really hard time expressing those things. And I think we need to do more of that.
100%.
And one of the things I went through with the kids to help them to be more discerning about that is, okay, if someone is bragging or being conceited, how do you know the difference?
That's true.
They can tell the difference. You can tell the difference. Somebody's trying to feel better than you.
That's true. That's true.
Right? Or if they're not, then they're quick to point out something you're good at. You know, if I'm just talking about a strength that I have, I'm also going to be acknowledging your strengths.
Right.
So I just think that we don't give enough encouragement, motivation, inspiration, positivity to students to help them succeed. You know, we tell them, oh, you're weak in this area, you're not making in this, so you need to be better in this. If you want to go to a good school, you have to do this. But then we don't say all the ways that they're succeeding at that.
100.
We tend to focus on what is not working.
Well, and Dr. Hopper, thank you so much for your time. I know I told you 15 minutes, right? I had it on there for 15, but I had to keep talking to you because it's such an important such an important conversation. And now, what's the best way for folks in our area? We're going to do a write-up on RiverBender.com and an article too. What's the best way for us to get a hands on this piece?
You can get the book from Barnes and Noble, from Amazon, from Balboa Press, which is the publisher. So it's available in a lot of places. I have a website, Ph.D.com. I will be having some trainings that will be coming up in the spring next year. And I'm available to talk to teachers anytime, any place. In the
start of 2025, we'll have to get you back on the show because I'd love to hear more about your training opportunities, because I'm sure that there's teachers that watch this show and superintendents that do too that love to learn more about ways that they could maybe help themselves and the classroom.
That's awesome. Yes, I would be happy to. I get passionate about it. I'm very excited.
It's great.
I mean, I think that this is. Teachers are going to be, there are teachers who are going to take this and run with it and be so much better than I ever was at it. And I'm looking forward to that.
And that's the whole point of this. And I just think that's what's so cool. And Linda Hopper, Ph.D., thank you so much for your time. We'll link everything on a write-up on RiverBender.com. At 9:48, we'll take a quick pause here. More Daily Show in the Heart of the 618 continues right after these quick messages.